You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christi and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Hey everybody, we're back. Personally, I am so excited for this episode. This is, if not my favorite movie, easily in the top 5 of my favorite movies. If anybody says, what is your favorite movie? This is my go-to answer. So you have been warned, there will be tons of gushing on my part. We are talking today about the movie Blue Jay. It had a limited release in October of 2016, and then Netflix released it in December of 2016. The director is Alex Lehman, and it stars Mark Duplass and Sarah Paulson. Put those two people in any movie, and I am there. I love those two people. I've loved Sarah Paulson since Studio 60. If you have not seen Studio 60, go find it right now, and then come back and listen to this podcast.
Well, after watching all of my films, too.
Right. Mark Duplass is listed as the writer, although it's almost like writer of an outline, because this movie, which once again is why it's so cool, is largely improv. I can't even imagine doing an improv movie.
Well, I can, because the writing is a lot easier. You just say, Jim and Amanda have emotions, and then they take it from there.
Yeah. And I guess when you cast Mark Duplass and Sarah Paulson, you can do stuff like that. It's just amazing. So let's get into it. Now it's time for Mike's pickup line, which is the first line of the film. Take it away.
The first line of the film is, Jim? Normally, I like to see some sort of exposition, some sort of narrative question posed, and this one is a little bit more subtle, so we have to wait a few more frames until she then asks Jim, "You're not married?" And that sets up kind of the narrative of the entire film, but technically the first line is just, Jim?
And even though there isn't writing, those first few scenes, because that line comes in at what, like probably, is it even like 2-3 minutes in?
Yeah, it feels like it.
Yeah, we see a lot of exposition that kind of feeds the narrative even before she says Jim. We learn through the first few clips that he's either moved into this house, he's definitely renovating the house because he puts down where those, like a cloth that you put down when you're painting
tarps
drop
or
cloth.
drop cloth, sure.
So he's doing something. It's like a new house to him, maybe, or he's fixing this house up.
He's packing up boxes of stuff from the past. Ooh, subtle.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that I love about this movie is, to me, they just slowly unfold the story. And so you're always kind of, every scene you're learning something new. You're still kind of, I wouldn't say confused, but you still don't know the full picture. They don't hit you over the head with what's going on immediately.
No, that's the brilliance of that subtlety, because when you actually know people and you have history, you don't have any exposition when you meet them. Hi, Amanda, remember when that just never happens. So I think that's why it really resonates so well, is all of the milieu, the setting, the backstory for these characters, they know, but we don't. And so it leaks through in all of their actions and in the background, the sets and everything, but the viewer isn't beaten over the head with it. I think that's really, like I said, subtle and brilliant.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's just beautiful because the whole movie is done in black and white, which it takes a special movie for me to enjoy a black and white movie. But I think this one is done so expertly so that the cinematography, I'm leaping ahead a little bit, is just stunning because of the black and white.
Well, I have this theory. I've never heard anybody else say it, but it's my theory and I'm sticking to it, that black and white is more emotional. It taps into the emotions more easily than color.
Well, in the whole film, the tagline is meeting by chance. When they return to their tiny California hometown, two former high school sweethearts reflect on their shared past. And I think black and white evokes, historical.
Yeah,
looking back.
Well, we also use it somewhat in film as documentary,
yes.
Right? You'll see the black and white is used to indicate, no, this is for real. We're not playing narrative games anymore.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. A couple of lines to me inform the viewer. They go to a diner, which the cinematography in the diner is just that. Jumping ahead a little bit, there was a pause count on my behalf because I was just, look at this, it's in black and white, and it was just beautiful.
Well, another digression is when you're shooting black and white, you generally need contrast to help. Obviously, if you have sky blue and tan as the only colors, it gets pretty washed out in black and white. So I think that's why they put Sarah Paulson in that black dress, kind of man's dress jacket almost. But I have to say, I was a little confused by that choice for her character. So maybe I missed something, but it didn't make sense with the rest of her outfit to me. But it did definitely give a nice contrast when they're sitting in that booth.
And she says the Blue Jay has gone downhill. So that tells us that the Blue Jay, the diner that they went to, is a place that they frequented when they were in high school.
And at this point in the film, we're not exactly sure what their relationship is. We know that they know each other, but we don't really have an idea of what that was. Maybe they were just friends in high school.
Right. And she makes a comment about she has some stepsons and they go on college tours. And it was so subtle and just heartbreaking. He wipes away a tear. And we don't know why, but you can just tell that for some reason, the idea of taking a child on college tours breaks his heart a little bit.
And you can see Duplass does that throughout the rest of the film. When there's an emotional scene, he wipes his right eye.
Yeah.
I want to, before we leave that though, I want to talk about that scene in the diner, because if you were to type up their dialogue and look at it, there's nowhere near as much going on as actually happens on the screen. This is the first time when we really start to see these actors bringing their A game, right? They're just phenomenal at the undertext that's going on while they're talking about those mundane things that two people who haven't seen each other in a while would talk about.
Yep. And so they leave the diner and then they're walking. I think at that point they had decided to walk back to his house because she wanted to see his house. So now we know that house is the house that he grew up in, and she wants to go back and see it. And they stop by this little convenience store and they see the checker. And once again, these are more facts about their life and how they used to spend time just unfolding. And so she goes, "No, I can't believe that's him. Is that him?" And so obviously we know that's the same checker that was there when they were in high school. And they make a wager. He's not going to remember that thing we used to do. No, he is. And you're just, as an audience member, we don't have a clue of what they're talking about. So they go in and they do this little thing. And the checker asks them, "So you guys are still together?" And they pretend that they are. And this is when you first see them, both Amanda and Jim, I believe, right?
Jim, yes.
Yeah. They pretend throughout the rest of the movie. And this is something they used to do when they were young kids in high school, kind of pretending they were together.
Well, you also see with that go traveling bit, which he knows means that they want to get singles of beers from different countries, that they have a history together, right? Because she's able to say go traveling, and it's obvious that Jim knows what she's talking about. So we now start to see they had a relationship, fairly serious relationship, but it looks like it was romantic.
Yeah. And so they pretend to be married. They tell the clerk that yes, they're still together and they're married. And then they go down by the lake. And there's some more beautiful cinematography.
Pictures.
In this lake shot. Anytime I think you're by water, who knew that by the water in black and white could be just as stunning?
Well, that's, I think a great job by the cinematographer and the rest of the camera department in order to get the contrast and the highlights such that it works.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about filmmaking where we kind of cheat is there's a point where there's some dialogue about the pink and the purple jelly beans in the bag of jelly beans that Jim bought at the store. Now, we watched Jim fill up that bag. We can see how big that bag is. If there are 20 jelly beans in there, I'd be stunned. There aren't going to be a ton of pink and purple jelly beans in there at all. He didn't pick through them. We saw him just scoop a bunch in. Doesn't matter. Narratively, it's a great point, so we go ahead and run with it. But also, we never see the actual jelly beans, so they could be any color. They didn't have to exist. Great cheating.
I think they were jelly beans.
They probably were, but I'm just saying as a viewer, we don't know.
They leave the lake and they continue walking back to Jim's house, and they're walking away from us. And so they're in silhouette, which works once again, complements the black and white. And you can tell it's probably dusk. They're being backlit. I mean, they're front lit, but to us, to the audience, it's backlit. And so they have this beautiful aura, both of them. And it's another stunning shot.
It's a really gorgeous shot because, as Christi mentioned, there's the halo from the lighting, but also you have the sun in the upper left, and there's a telephone pole on the left side of the screen that's acting as a frame. I mean, it's just really gorgeously done.
So they go to the house, and he, I think, excuses himself to go to the restroom, and she's now wandering around, and you see her stop at his high school picture. And to me, that was a sweet moment because it's like, oh, that's the boy she fell in love with. That's the boy that she loves. And she just looks at it adoringly. And to me, you can see on her face, like, she's flooded with the memories of their time together in high school.
So fun fact, those are pictures of him, I believe, because you see in the photo of him in a Letterman jacket at Jay, and I believe Mark went to Jesuit.
He did go, yes, that's in my trivia. He did go to Jesuit, and we'll just throw it in right now. The school's mascot was the Blue Jay.
Blue Jay. When I first heard that title, I thought maybe his brother was sad, but apparently not.
No. And then they go into his room, and she's reading through some composition books.
Well, he's before he comes back, I believe, she's reading through the composition notebook, and I liked it because it was an opportunity to work some exposition into the movie, because this is a book that she has not seen before. It's his journal, so she would naturally need to read it to know what's in there, and so we get that dialogue that provides some more insight into the characters and their relationship. Now, at this point, she finds a letter, and the letter is important in the film. It comes back, and so she pockets it. And I have to say, the first time I saw the film, I didn't really understand why you would do that. It seemed like if it was to her, she would just open it. And if it wasn't, you wouldn't take it.
But he walks in on her.
Well, yeah, thieves have to work quickly when the guy comes home.
Yeah. So then they kind of go into this playing thing. And this is another moment where Jim wipes his eye because they're listening to old audio tapes that they have that they recorded when they were in high school. And they're listening to their high school selves pretending to be married, but they're not just married. They're like married in their probably 40s, early 50s, because they're talking about their grown children calling them and telling them about like college or whatever.
Now, this is a generational thing because younger viewers might not know that cassette tapes and recording your own audio was a big deal at the time. There was a long period of humanity where we weren't able to record our own voices. And now we have podcasts where you have to listen to our voices. But at the time, it was a big deal to have done that. But it was also brilliant filmmaking because you get to see some serious acting chops. We have dialogue delivered via this not great audio quality cassette recorder from the 80s. And while that's the only dialogue that's delivered, visually we see Duplass and Paulson acting, and it is absolutely a tour de force. I just am so impressed at their ability to have, again, this subtext going on outside of the dialogue. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, when they, I think his character, Jim's character in the high school off the tape says, "Did you talk to Jessica today?" And when the two actors sitting on the bed hear that, they both have a physical reaction. Their bodies stiffen, and they both all of a sudden become very uncomfortable. And so once again, as an audience member, you're like, why does that make him so uncomfortable? What's going on? What's the big deal? Why? Instead of just laughing at what was it about this comment? Because they had been laughing at themselves, thinking like, oh my gosh, listen to how ridiculous we were in high school. And that's the moment there's this turn. So once again, it piques our interest as an audience member. And as someone who admires good storytelling, because I don't feel very confident in my ability to do it, this is one of those moments that I just fall in love with this movie.
So one of the things that plays in there, I think, at least for me, is you now have this adult male and adult female who are in a bedroom on a bed. And they're in physically close quarters. They're not touching, but they're close together. And so when there's that moment, the first time I saw the film, I see that level of uncomfort. I didn't know if this meant that, something had changed, because I'm thinking man and woman that close together, there's a natural idea that there's some intimacy there. And did that remind them of something? Did it call into the question like, oh my gosh, we're really close. She's married, what's going on here? So I wasn't sure what was going on, but I thought it actually kind of called my eye to the sexual tension, and necessarily more than other things.
Mm-hmm. A moment, I think they shut off the tape and she says, I don't know who that person was, but the look on his face is, I know who that person was. I think there's some sadness in her face and acting and appearance because she wishes she was that person. She's sad that she lost who that person was. And I think she even says, like, I used to have fun.
Well, and that's going to come back in the film, but it's an odd statement, right? The viewer notices that because she appears to have been having fun with Jim all day.
Right.
So why would that be an issue?
So then they're in the bedroom, I think, and there's almost a smoochy, I believe.
And almost smoochy.
Yes. And then another scene that I just love is they actually reenact the scene that they were listening to on the tape. So he comes home from quote unquote work and she has made dinner. And because he's a bachelor in this rundown house, I guess all he had was scrambled eggs and top ramen and maybe soda crackers or oyster crackers. So she has this very thrown together dinner in front of them and they're laughing. And once again, this is all improv. And he does something, I can't remember what it is. And do you remember?
He delivers a line. I forget the exact line, but he delivers a comic line.
Yeah. And she spews scrambled eggs in his face. And
it's a great spit take.
It's so great. And I really do believe I've watched, like I said, I love Sarah Paulson. So I have gone down the rabbit hole on YouTube of all of her interviews. And I think that that's a real moment.
It looks completely real.
And they just ran with it. And so for this cinephile, I once again just fell deeper in love with these two in this movie because in that moment I felt like that they caught it on camera, this real moment between these two actors who are improving. One cracked the other up. She had an unexpected reaction. I mean, she literally spews scrambled eggs all over him.
It's really great. But that whole thing, so there's this recurring theme throughout the film of the two of them pretending to be a couple. First at the store and then with the recording in the bedroom and now here again. What I find interesting about it is it's a very 50s June Cleaver kind of relationship that they're portraying. And the guy in the store, the character's named Wayne, he says, here you are, the lovebirds, the famous lovebirds. So we also hear through some other dialogue later on that she was into Wuthering Heights and other romance novels in high school. So that makes me now think as a viewer that perhaps she had this idealized view of what marriage would be like, what a relationship would be like. And then, of course, we start to suspect, is that part of what that look was like? Did she have an idealized view that he couldn't live up to? And so you can see him as a character looking like he's fairly competent early in the film when he's by himself in the house, but he doesn't seem like he's necessarily rolling in it in life, that maybe life has been a little hard for him. So you start to see kind of that crack in that veneer of the perfect little family.
Yep. So they put on some music, and it's obviously music from their high school years, and they dance and they laugh, and it's almost like they're getting back in touch to the 18-year-old Jim and Amanda versus the 40-year-old Jim and Amanda. And she kind of opens up about her husband and their kids and how she loves being a stepmom. She's talking about a dog rescue place that she opened. And I think that once again, this was great show don't tell, or a way to infuse the narrative into the conversation. She says, Chris thought it would be a good idea for me, meaning that it wasn't necessarily a passion of hers, but it was something that her husband said would be a good idea. And so she followed it.
And it's interesting because we know that the actor himself went to Jesuit, which sounds to me like a Catholic school. And there's a part where they're dancing and he makes the joke, leave enough room for Jesus in between, right? A fairly standard line. But we also see a close-up at one point of his hand on her lower back. And I can tell you as a gent, there are very few places it's acceptable to put your hands on a lady. So that, I think, was a great way to show don't tell of showing a level of intimacy that his hand is fairly low down on her back there, and then they tilt up to her face and his face, and their foreheads are touching. So I thought that was really cleverly done, especially, right, because it's improv.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then cut to, they're sitting in the back of his old Chevrolet that conceivably could have been his pickup truck in fact we know it was his pickup truck.
We find out it was his truck in high school.
She's talking about her sadness and he says, I get it. And there's something about the way he says it, he does know her sadness. And we find out later he actually has shared her sadness.
Right. And so I think it was a good way to end up Act 2 on her sharing that she's not happy, when the end of Act 1 was him at the lake sharing why he's not happy. So now we've kind of balanced out those characters.
Right. She says she appreciates him because you know me and you never made me feel wrong for who I am.
Obviously, she's trying to compare and contrast that to her husband.
Right.
What I found was interesting also is that she's telling him about her taking antidepressants, and his arm is around her. So I mentioned earlier with dancing, his touching was in the acceptable zones for Catholic high school dances. This is definitely not an acceptable touch between two people who aren't in a relationship. So now here's this level of intimacy where he's physically they're touching. He's got his arm around her. They look like they're ready to make out in the back of this truck. And then she tells him something that she has never told any other person. So, I mean, that just raises the intimacy stakes really high.
Mm-hmm. And he mentions that, that in this exact place is where they had sex for the first time. And I think, was it his first time, I think he says?
It was 38 seconds.
Yes. And then she asks if he will kiss her. And he hesitates because he is like,
this is crossing a line.
Yes. And he knows it. And I think he never stopped loving her. And I think he's aware enough, if he does kiss her, that his heart, if it wasn't already all in, is now all in.
Well, I think it's the line that follows, where she says, I know what I'm asking, shows us that she knows that he is not fallen out of love with her, and she's asking to basically release the avalanche.
Yes. So then we see him go into the house, and it's obvious they're going to get it on.
Waka waka.
And they're on his boyhood bed, and he says, I love you.
Oops.
And it comes to a screeching halt.
Yeah, that was not the right move for him at that time if he wanted to get intimate with her.
So really quickly, we are just probably launched into, I would say, the third act at this point, because she kind of freaks out and she goes back into the living room and she's taking off like a sweatshirt he had given her, and she's putting back on that black coat.
The great thing about this is at that point, the first time I saw it, I was thinking, oh, she's just realized she's about to sleep with another man and her husband would be upset and she would now be the cheating wife, etc., etc. But
he comes unglued and he says, and now we learn almost everything.
There's exposition in his massively awesome crying fit.
He says, it was my baby too. It was our baby. Why did you do this? Why did you have to do this? And she says, you weren't ready. And he says, I was a scared kid. And
I think it would have been easy for that to be a scenery chewing kind of performance, but he pulled it off. I mean, he went completely toddler on that, and it's just perfect. It works.
Mm-hmm. The pain of both of them, you immediately, they're these 40-year-old people, but it's almost like they're dealing with it in their 17-year-old selves. Just how maybe a conversation that they never had then they're having right now, screaming at one another, of both of them equally saying, you handled this poorly and I'm mad at you.
Well, and there's great physical acting from Duplass at the end. He's collapsed to his knees and he's hugging her legs, and it's like a child would hug someone, which is the fundamental heartbreaking issue here. So superb acting, fantastic, over the moon. This is so impressive to me.
It is. And so now it's dawn and they're walking back to the house, they're walking back to their cars that they left at the grocery store. And once again, another beautiful shot.
Oh yeah.
It's black and white. How do I know it's dawn? I mean, that's good cinematography right there.
It really is.
And there's no one on the street. And so that just tells us how early it is, that even in this sleepy little town, there would be somebody driving down the road, and there's no one. So they are talking by the car, and when she was telling him how depressed she was, she says, I can't even cry. So now at the car, she starts crying. And this is what I love about Sarah Paulson. She can go 0 to 60. So she's crying by the car, and all of a sudden she just points at her face and her eyes. And she's like this look like, oh my God, look, I'm crying. And he gets it. And so it immediately goes from complete sadness to they're both laughing at one another. And it pretty much cuts to black at that point.
Now, I would argue that we all know that they get back together again and live happily ever after.
That's what I want to believe. I want to believe that she went back and said to Chris, it's been great. Thanks for sharing your kids with me for a couple years, but
I can't feel emotion with you, but I can with this guy. We kind of made up. I'm sorry for Chris. Maybe we can make a short film about his journey, but they need to end up together.
They do. And so Mike hates it usually when movies cut to black. I want to ask how you feel.
That's not true. That's not true because I do believe that the filmmakers made a statement. I hate when they cut to black without resolving the narrative question. This is me personally. I know it can be done well. I just generally don't like it. But in this case, the narrative question that she asked at the very beginning is, Jim, you're not married. And hey, in my mind, they resolved that issue in that we see that I believe their relationship has repaired itself in a true and adult fashion, not in the high school dreaming of I Love Lucy kind of style of marriage and relationship, but an actual true human beings who have their own baggage, their own problems, their own struggles, and they've become honest with each other and they have an authentic love for each other. So I believe they did actually resolve the question, and it was fine to go to black.
Do you think that Amanda moves back to Crestline and lives, like, does she open up a little boutique, a little doggy biscuit boutique?
No, Blue Jay's gone downhill. That town's dying. He's going to sell that house and they're going to move. Yeah, I think instead they're going to move to Santa Cruz and he's going to open a surf shop where he sells surfboards to people, and she's going to run a cute little vegan cafe.
I was just going to say a smoothie bar next door.
Oh, yeah, maybe, yeah, smoothie. That makes sense.
Love it. We need a driving review. There wasn't much driving in this movie. Mike, do you have any driving?
Well, I do have an automotive review. First of all, why was that a Chevy pickup? Should have been a Dodge. Obviously, we have quite a few models for them to choose from. There is another automotive tie-in.
Tell us.
The composer for this, Julian Wass, also composed the music for Hit and Run from Dax Shepard, which is all about cars.
Which we will be talking about at some point.
And I'll try to keep my fanboying to a minimum. And that was about it. No driving at all. There was some walking, some sitting in a truck bed, but no driving.
Yes. So we do actually have some head trauma in this. We alluded to it earlier.
Some head trauma? I just remember the spit take.
No. There, in that toddler tantrum that Jim has, he slaps his head about 2 or 3 times.
Oh, good job, Jim.
Yeah. He was really mad. So is there anything else that you want to talk about?
Well, one thing I really liked was a callback to a sleeper hit, Men at Work. Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez made a movie about being garbage men that was a personal favorite of my good buddy Joe and I back in the day. We love that film. I have met 0 people who have also seen it, so I love seeing it in this film.
I've seen it, but I know I saw it because I had a huge crush on Emilio Estevez.
Didn't we all?
Okay, so should we do a little by the numbers?
Let's.
Okay, so this, like I said, was released in December of 2016. It made $21,000, but that's mostly worldwide because it made like $5,000, I think I saw on its debut.
Limited release.
Yeah, well, and then it went to Netflix. So I wish I could find, if anybody knows how I can find metrics for how many people have watched this on Netflix. I don't know if they publicize that, but that would be curious to me.
Also nice if we knew how much it, quote unquote, made in the sense of how much credit it got, right?
Yeah, I couldn't find that either. And it's unrated. It runs an hour and 20 minutes. It's listed as a drama/romance.
Fair.
I guess we do have the kiss when they're making out on the bed briefly.
Smoochy, smoochy, smoochy. Yeah, 1 hour, 5 minutes into the film, there is a smoochy.
And like I said, it is filmed in Crestline, California. If you don't know where it is, look it up. It was filmed over the course of 7 days, which is very Duplass.
So, yeah, it's a good point to maybe mention that this is, in some sense, a primer in independent filmmaking because they're using a lot of their techniques to keep the budget down. So, very few sets, one set of wardrobe for the actors, very few actors, a compressed time frame for the film, so you don't have to worry a lot about moving cars back and forth, filling in traffic, and the parking lot looks different or something like that. So it's all those techniques. It's really a wonderful independent film that was made on probably a fairly low budget. I don't think we have budget numbers, but definitely, not a lot of CGI in this one.
Right. This is the Duplass brothers definitely inspire Dodge Media Productions and how we approach movie making. And for a lot of the reasons that Mike just said, this is a very Duplass movie. And I think another reason why I love it so much. One last little bit of trivia. It was filmed on a Canon camera without built-in recording or built-in power source.
So it was like a security camera.
Yeah, it says that was created as an army or security camera.
That's maybe to get really good black and white imagery, would be my guess. Maybe it has a specifically sensitive sensor.
So you guys, I hope that you watched Blue Jay before you listened to this and then appreciated it even more. If not, you will still enjoy Blue Jay after knowing all of the secrets. Please, please, please go watch it. Tell me what you think. Hit us up on Facebook and Instagram. Shoot us an email at Christi at dodgemediaproductions.com. I would love to know who else watched this and what you thought of it. I promise you won't be sorry. You've burnt through The Office a couple times, Breaking Bad you've gone through. If you're looking for something to watch on Netflix, please, please, please spend an hour and 20 minutes watching Blue Jay.
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christi and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.